name's Nav Gill. I'm currently Strategic Alliance Director for the Biochemical Engineering Department at UCL. So this slide sort of just gives you a very quick summary of, I guess, how I got to where I am, which, if I'm being brutally honest, after 5 o'clock today and work is done, I've accidentally fallen into. And I think the reason that this makes me really happy is that sometimes we make a life plan and things end up finding us, even though we're running in the other direction. So this has kind of been my journey and my story. I started doing chemical engineering at Birmingham a long time ago, and I quickly realized, pursuing this sort of degree, that it was the bio aspect that was most stimulating, and I didn't really want to go work in the petrochemical industry. So it was actually late in a lab optimizing beer making through doing some mixing studies and looking at hydrodynamic fluid stresses on yeast cells that inspired me to actually go on to UCL to do a PhD. The PhD that I did at UCL was sponsored by a company called Hazard Evaluation Laboratories. So from very early on in my sort of research career, I had a very much an industrial focus of translational research that would directly impact what the sponsoring company would be doing in terms of process development, and also what it meant in terms of the business impact. So I was very fortunate to be involved in sort of that discussion from a very early stage. So through this PhD, it was a very steep learning curve. I spent a lot of time at the company, and we basically created a prototype of a miniature bioreactor system for high throughput experimentation. So that's sort of being able to do multiple experiments, because the scale that you're working at is very small. And this is also much more cost effective than doing it at sort of a standard scale. And this allows us to mimic what happens at larger scale in industry. So the prototype was a success, and they actually ended up creating a new product line for the company. So that was a really good outcome from the project. Sort of carrying on with the research theme, I didn't really want to leave UCL. I think you can see from this slide that I have a mad love for UCL because I keep going backwards and forwards. I went on to carry on as a postdoctoral researcher within the university, again with sponsored projects with industry. So I worked on 2 projects there. One was actually optimizing the process development for botulinum neurotoxins. So this was a treatment used for pain relief with Syntaxin, and which is now acquired by Ipsen and Public Health England. This was really an important project because they ended up taking the research that we did at UCL and implementing it at manufacturing level. So we actually improved the process for this therapy, which was another lovely outcome from this work. And then I don't know if any of you are familiar with single-use technologies. So typically we run a lot of bioprocessing in glass and stainless steel type equipment. But a few years ago, actually over a decade ago, single-use technologies came on board. So this is where we start to replace bioreactors with basically bags that are the equivalent. And we set up a brand new lab within UCL, and I was lucky enough to be one of the first people to start doing research in our new single-use systems. This led to a very bad day in the lab, as it does, and there was an email that popped up with an opportunity at GE Healthcare, which is now Cytiva, and I went for a role, which I wouldn't normally have done. But like I said, it was a bad day in the lab, so I was inspired. And I ended up getting the role as a product specialist, which very quickly evolved into sort of business development manager for their upstream business. And my territory was the whole of UK and Ireland. So this was really interesting for me because I was the girl from academia entering a high impact sales team with no sales experience. But you know, this was a steep learning curve, and very quickly I realized that this was exactly the sort of role that suited my personality, and just harnessing all the experience of the industrial interaction from the research projects it really served me well in terms of dealing with clients and resolving problems, but also growing business. And I think it's been mentioned by Brenda and Iris before, sort of the younger folks who join the BioLadies group, when you sort of talk about these soft skills that you learn through research, they're not to be underestimated when we enter industry. And this really helped me when I moved to GE. And then after about 5 years at GE, I got itchy feet again, and I came back to UCL in this role as Strategic Alliance Director. So before I sort of go into detail about what my role involves, because it's quite unusual for an academic department, I thought I'd say a few words. I thought I'd say a few words about the department that I work in. So I'm part of biochemical engineering, same department as Brenda, and really we are one of the largest departments in the world in terms of teaching and research in the bioprocessing space. So we are also the founding lab in the discipline over from sort of the early 60s, and we spun out of chemical engineering. So we're quite a special department. And we sort of cover, in terms of the research areas, we cover 3 key areas of industrial biotechnology, biopharmaceuticals, and cell and gene therapies. And what's really special about our department, and the piece that I really love, is that we don't operate as a traditional academic department. We really operate as a multidisciplinary team, which makes my job a lot easier. So sort of when industry comes and tells us about the challenges or the areas of interest, I'm really able to put together a team of academics to address that, to shape projects. So across these 3 areas that we do research in, our academic team has strengths in sort of ultra scale down technologies. This basically allows us to mimic what happens at larger scale, but bring those insights in a cost-effective way at the lab scale. So when we scale up, there are no nasty surprises. So this allows us to do lots of experiments in a high throughput mechanism and apply process modeling to get the results that we would expect at larger scale. And then we apply lots of different know-how from sort of synthetic biology, manipulating your cells, your product of interest, to really find not only your process window of operation, but also the maximizing productivity. So just a quick summary on sort of, Iris, when I was putting this together, I was like, how do I summarize in a few words what I do in the department? So this slide was a bit of a surprise for me as well. I guess the orange headings are sort of the themes of the key areas that I cover. So a very large piece of my role is around managing the industrial training program that we run. So bioprocessing is quite a cutting edge field, because we're constantly developing new and novel ways to make new therapies in a cost-effective manner. And this really relies on developing a robust manufacturing process. So there's constant changes in research that's been done in the space, new methodologies, new technologies that are coming on board. So industry has told us over the years, how do we keep people who are already employed in these areas up to date with the latest trends? So over 25 years ago, our department pioneered some industrial training courses. So this was the MBI program. And 10 years ago, we also pioneered the Vision Leadership program, specifically for the bioindustry. So I'm sort of program director for these courses. And a few years ago, we're an academic department. We don't have sort of a business strategy in how to operate this. But a few years ago, we implemented a business model that now enables us to run these courses in a self-sustaining way. So it's actually a really healthy revenue stream for the department. So we're allowed to invest in more courses, but also allows us to sort of do creative things in new projects that we want to start. So I kind of manage the strategy for operation and delivery. What's really unique about these courses is that it not only gives our academics a platform to be visible in industry with their research and disseminate their research, but we work very closely with industry to do some of the teaching. And this also then gives us access through the speakers and the delegates who attend to build new industry contacts through a different channel. So one of my dreams would be international delivery. And this is something that we started doing with our leadership course. We've sort of delivered it in the UK, in the US, and just before lockdown, I got back from Australia. So we were very lucky there. But with the MBI program, I'd really like to start looking into mechanisms where I can deliver this internationally. The other major piece of my role is around industrial collaborations. So I basically manage all the major industry interactions in the department. This has been a very interesting experience since I came back to UCL, because internally, it's really important for me to understand what the academics are interested in, not only now, but also in the future, the areas that they're moving in, and the kinds of companies that they want to work with. And externally, it takes the pressure off the academics if I can understand what the company's sort of motivations are, what their key priorities are, sort of managing their expectations of what it means to do research with academia.
Sorry, you've already done 11 minutes. So
oh, have I? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so people can ask
okay.
questions after.
So I can wrap up.
Minutes. Just for another
yeah, I can wrap up. Sorry, Iris, I've lost track of time. So basically, yeah, I manage all of the industrial collaborations, and a key part of that is also strategic partnerships. So these are sort of the larger multi-million type collaborations that we have with key companies like Paul. Constantly seeking new opportunities, new mechanisms for generating revenue for the department, and also supporting academics in a mentoring capacity of how to take discussions with industry, but also where they want to be sort of now with their research and where they're going in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I think I can stop there, Iris.